Sam Lee.
Carl,
Another
great
hand.
seeing you again.
Absolutely, man. Nice to see you. It's been just over a year.
Yeah.
Now we're in Toronto, but it looks, minus the mountains, it looks, the weather's very much Vancouverish.
Well, I'm actually from Toronto.
Are you?
I moved over in 2007. I went to Australia, obviously God's country there, and ended up coming back to Canada in 2009, but settled in Vancouver. So this is home for me. This is actually bliss. I've never seen PDAC so warm.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. I just want to mention to the audience that if you like the interview today with Sam, it's going to be more of a personal one. We have a webinar we're doing with Northisle Copper on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern. All right, man. So how old are you?
How old am I? I'm 48 years old.
48, and you were born in Toronto.
I was born in Toronto.
Whereabouts?
I was born in the Annex, but I spent probably most of my time in the North Toronto area. I played AAA hockey for the Toronto Young Nats. I played my baseball there. I went to high school up there, so that was really my community. But man, this city has changed so much. Just looking at all these buildings, they didn't exist. All this traffic didn't exist, that's for sure.
How many years were you in Toronto for?
Up until my 30s, mid-30s, I'd say. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, the bulk of your life.
Yeah.
This is really home for you.
This is home for me. Yeah.
The Annex is a nice spot. That's pretty cool that you were born in the Annex. That's one of the wealthiest parts of Toronto.
Which is funny because when we were growing up, it was one of the most disparate parts of Toronto. And we lived in a house which I think was one of the oldest, if not the oldest house in the Annex. It used to be a horse stable. It wasn't a house at all. In fact, it was quite the little place. But so this city has just boomed. It's just incredible to see the amount of affluency and growth that this the city has. So I'm happy for it. It's changed for the good and for the bad, but certainly it's very interesting to be back.
The weather is odd. I mean, usually PDAC you have very cold and windy weather. It's usually cold and windy. Last year we got a big snowstorm too, actually.
Yeah, that's right. So this is probably my 27th year at PDAC.
Wow.
And you're absolutely right. I'm right now without a jacket.
Yeah.
My sleeves are rolled up. It's a gorgeous day. I've been walking around. It is quite stunning. This year has been a bit of a volatile climate environment, certainly in Vancouver as well.
Yeah. So I came to Vancouver for VRIC,
Mm-hmm.
and when I landed, it was minus 12. Right before, like I came in a week before, I think, and then after that, we got 1.5 feet of snow.
Right.
Like, which is not what you're supposed to get. That's usually what we have here. It's almost like there's been a reversal.
Yeah, it's Whistler certainly has been suffering because of the unpredictability in some of the local mountains up in Vancouver, Cypress, and Mount Seymour and Grouse have been suffering as well. It's absolutely bonkers what's happening. But I've heard they got some great snow this week, about 120 centimeters or so.
Oh, that's good.
I'm a bit sad I'm missing it.
Yeah. Would you say you're a competitive guy?
I think I'm a very competitive guy. I think I take that approach around the hockey and the baseball that I played to life. I think that's sometimes good, sometimes bad.
Yeah.
I've been known to be a bit of an intense CEO, but I think that's who I am, and
Sure.
yeah, that's what I enjoy doing.
Yeah, you want to push things along. What position did you play baseball? I was a baseball player myself.
Oh, were you? So I started as a middle infielder, but I wasn't quick or good looking enough to actually make that spot. So
You were kind of tall too.
I was kind of tall. I actually went as a catcher, but then I realized my knees were hurting a bit, even at a young age, and that kind of messed up my hockey. So then I ended up being a third baseman and an outfielder. So pretty much a utility player. Anything but pitching.
You didn't pitch.
My hands are extremely weirdly configured. I've got a massive palm to finger ratio, so I couldn't throw a curveball for life dependent on it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, and out of the two sports, which one was your favorite, like hockey or baseball?
Great question. So actually, it's baseball. I coach baseball now, and but I played very high level hockey. I went all the way up to the junior ranks, and but there's something being at the ballpark on a summer day and hanging out with your mates and hitting the ball and taking BP, shagging flies, and just there's nothing that beats that.
Have you ever gotten into like beer league slow pitch at all?
I have not gotten there yet. I still can hit the fastball. I still can try to hit a curve, and there's some pretty good baseball in BC.
Sure.
It's a totally different environment because the weather system
Yeah.
is obviously more congruent to baseball. So
All year round.
they're playing right now,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool.
It is cool, yeah.
Yeah.
I know, I wish. When I was younger, all I wanted to do was play baseball in the wintertime, and I don't think we really had domes back then. Do you remember us having domes?
No, we didn't have domes. We certainly didn't have domes, and just the level of competition now has just increased dramatically. I'm sure they have the same thing in Toronto, but it's travel ball now, right?
Yeah.
So it's just you send these kids to the training facilities for 2-3 times a week during the winter, and then they go traveling every kind of other week or perhaps every month down south, obviously somewhere warm, to play teams from the U.S. and all over the world. It's pretty cool actually to see.
Yeah.
Same thing goes with hockey. It's become big business, right? Quite frankly, it's completely unaffordable now for a number of people. I would have never been able to play hockey.
I wasn't able to.
Was that right? Okay, so I think it was it's become almost unreachable for most now. Which is a problem. It's something that needs to change.
Yeah, I'm not saying hockey players don't make good money. They do. But when you compare them to other professional sports, they really don't.
Yeah, I've always maintained, I've got young kids, you can't be doing it for that reason, right? Like it's the things that drive you has got to be your passion, your purpose, just things that make you have fun in life. It's probably the big reason why I switched over from being an investment banker for over 20 years to doing what I'm doing, being a CEO of a company. You've got real purpose, you've got real ability to set your goals and have a massive impact on achieving those goals. It is much less about you, more about the community and the purpose you serve. And I think that's the same thing about doing anything in life. You really have to find that purpose, find that happiness, find that reason to spend what arguably is the most important thing in life is your time, right? Like you just have to be able to justify spending your time in any place that you spend it. So, I've never told my kids to be professional athletes. I've never expected them to do anything other than be committed to what they do and to put 110%.
Take me through a day in the life of Sam from Monday to Friday. I mean, you're in good shape. Do you diet?
No, I don't
You
diet.
just eat whatever you want?
I've started, I'm actually starting to get extremely old right now, so I feel like these things like vision impairment and, acid reflux, that's all setting in right now. So I've tried something recently called the intermittent fasting, which I find really helps my acid generation in my stomach, and so I don't have to suffer from this acid reflux as much. So
it seems to be a thing when you get into your late 40s. You're like the third person that's mentioned this to me in the last week.
Intermittent fasting?
No, acid reflux.
Oh yeah, it's bonkers. Vision, acid reflux. What else? Like knees are going right now. I can't be jumping off of cliffs anymore. It is quite slow, but it's distressing. It hits you. It's 40 is definitely the age, right?
Do you work out?
No, everything that I do is.
You look like you work out.
I appreciate that, but everything I do is just motivated by just having fun, and I do not have fun working out. I ski. I obviously play baseball. I coach hockey. I'm on the ice quite a bit, but I just can't see myself in a weight room.
So the intermittent fasting, when you doing that every day or just?
Yep. So I haven't had breakfast. I had I guess my last meal last night was at a reception. So I think 10 o'clock was kind of the last thing that hit my mouth. Probably won't eat for another 4 hours. It's 8 o'clock right now. So
isn't that, I do that.
Do you?
Yeah, isn't it way more powerful? You kind of realize that you don't really need food as much as you want.
Correct, unless you're active, right? So certainly if I had a ride, like I said, if I cycle as well, if I go for a long ride, I will have a piece of toast beforehand and make sure that I fuel up.
Get some carbs in, yeah?
Yeah, this conference I was contemplating eating breakfast just because we're back to back at this conference. We've got about 50 meetings. It's absolutely bonkers.
Congrats.
Yeah, thanks. We've had really good success this year, so I think people are interested in hearing about the story. But yeah, I think when you need the energy, when you need to sort of be active and more active than not, then it is important to fuel your body. But for day-to-day purposes, I agree. You don't need to eat 3 times a day, personally, and your body seems to react better when you eat less versus more.
Yeah, it can work on other things in your body. It can start healing things.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I asked you to take us through a day, and then I went and digressed into dieting and working out. All right, so take me through a day with Sam. Monday morning, you're not at a conference, you're at home in Vancouver, you got a company to grow.
Yep.
What's that like?
Yeah, so I actually usually am on the road because our property is only about an hour flight from our offices in Vancouver, head offices in Vancouver. We have an office in Port Hardy. And, outside of the conferences and the traveling investor relations work, I do find myself on the road quite a bit. But part of the good thing about being a CEO is you can control your time, and you can control when you do travel, and you can kind of configure your personal life, which is very important to me. My family is extremely important to me, around your work schedule. So I typically travel between Monday to Thursday, or at least Monday to Wednesday, so back on Thursday, and then I really pack my my coaching, my volunteer responsibilities with my kids and other volunteer organizations that I'm involved with, from Thursday to Sunday, nights, obviously. So my typical day in the office, obviously wake up very early. Vancouver, one of the big differences in Vancouver and Toronto is that you're 3 hours behind in Vancouver, so the market's open much earlier. So I'm up pretty early, make sure that I'm responding to all of the inbounds, a lot of investor inbounds, a lot of inbounds from our operations, our executives, and I'm sure that that stuff gets settled at the beginning of the week. We always have Monday morning meetings to ensure that everybody is on track.
Get organized.
Yeah, maybe just make sure everyone knows what they're doing for the week and beyond, and that we're all enabling each other to do our jobs for the next week. So I find that quite a good conversation. It's quite robust. I think that it's interesting. The Vancouver, I'm sure it's happening in Toronto and other places in the world. It's less schmoozy than it was in the past. So there was always this idea, and it probably happened, it just never applied to me. At 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock when the markets close, all the CEOs, all the investors go to the bars and go drinking and cultivate their relationships that way. That environment has become less and less and less in Vancouver, and probably in other areas in the world.
Would you say that's a COVID thing?
No, I think COVID certainly exacerbated it, but I think it's more of a health thing. I think it's just not as. I think people recognize that going out to the bar every day, having a few pints, is just not as healthy as going for a walk. It's interesting. Even now, meetings in Vancouver are. It used to be coffees, or it used to be drinks. Now it changed to coffees, and now it's changed to walks.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so I take a lot of my meetings just out going for a walk. Hey, are you free for an hour to go for a walk?
No way. Go to Stanley Park or something?
Yeah, we just walk around, right? And the thing about Vancouver, when I got there, it rains a lot, and it's a little bit disheartening. You just don't want to go out, but once you get used to it, once you get in a good umbrella, good rain gear, it's a very it's a very civilized way to spend an hour with somebody. So that's a big part of what I do. A lot of walking meetings, and I think the relationship parts are you tend to gravitate towards like-minded people, right? And so there are certainly people that are at the bars and kind of cultivating their relationship. Nothing wrong with that, of course, but that's usually I tend to stay away from that. I do lunches, but probably not as frequently as I did certainly as a banker. When I was a banker for 20 years, I ran CIBC's global mining practice out of Vancouver.
I remember that from our first interview.
Yeah, it was lunch every day, right? It was a good way to
network.
These are close personal relationships and professional relationships, and it's always nice to share a meal with them. I think it's still part of the culture right now, but on the corporate side, you have more control again over your time and you don't feel like you need to do that every day.
Right.
Whereas a banker, you feel like you actually need to, have gotten multiple clients, right? You need to almost systematically schedule and proactively schedule these times with them.
Mm-hmm. Do you miss banking at all?
What do I miss about banking? I miss the excitement, sometimes the instant gratification. You're working on, multiple deals every year, and, a successful banker probably has about, 1 to 2 big deals, 3 to 4 medium-sized deals, and a couple of small deals every year. So that's a lot of action.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do miss that. It's a very sort of exciting environment. You're surrounded by type A, extremely intelligent, extremely motivated individuals.
Which is a competitive environment.
It is a competitive environment, and so I'm right into that environment, and it just feels like you're among very like-minded individuals. What I don't miss about it is that it is a purpose that is driven by a big organization that is, in my view, and separable from what I did, right? Mm-hmm. So I was an investment banker that focused on mergers and acquisitions, equity fundraisings. These relationships were very important to me because I know how important these activities are for these companies. For the most part, big bank-owned dealers in Canada, even in the U.S., have migrated away from that business because it is very unpredictable business. Mm-hmm. So they're looking, rightfully so, the banks are looking for recurring revenue business, predictable business, something that doesn't expose them to a tremendous amount of balance sheet liability, which investment banking tends to do because those relationships are usually fueled by lending relationships. And as a result, banks can get into big trouble when they are too exposed in one sector, one industry. Think of the dot-com boom in the tech industry back during the tech bubble, right? There are a lot of banks that were exposed to that liability. So, there was a lot of things that obviously I could leverage as a banker, being part of a big bank, but there are a lot of things that obviously prevented me from being in control of not only my time, but the effect that I had on my clients. And when you're trying to build relationships, you want to build them faithfully, and if you can't deliver the things that you want to deliver, or you're supposed to deliver because bigger organizational initiatives prevent you from doing that, then that's probably one of the most stressful things. When you can't deliver on a relationship, it's very stressful. So now, my relationships, my stakeholders, my rights holders, these are things that I can apply. The things I like most about banking, which is relationship building, I can apply them faithfully because I can deliver the company, right? I can deliver what I say that I want to deliver to these First Nation groups that I deal with, governments that I deal with, shareholders to the extent that's it's in my control. I can deliver these things, and that level, that sense of control, I think, is extremely important to me because in the end, people are not. They're not loyal to organizations. They're loyal to people and their relationships, right? And that's what strengthens the organization if everyone takes that approach within that organization.
Well said. Since you have an M&A background, M&A in mining right now, I'm talking to a lot of executives, things aren't looking too good for a lot of companies. And executive teams are reaching out for M&A activity. You have any thoughts on this right now? Absolutely.
I track it very closely, obviously, because of my background and the relationships I still have within the industry. I think I might have mentioned this last time, but when I worked as a banker, I worked on over $100 billion of M&A and equity, and the majority of that happened kind of circa 2005 to 2011, right? So it's the second half of the cycle, the super cycle last time from a mining perspective was around 2001 to 2011. That was driven by Chinese growth, the urbanization of China, which required insatiable demand for these commodities, and that policy was set and affected in 2001. It took about 5 years to get to the second half of the cycle. Okay, so where are we? The big question is, where are we now in that cycle? Because that affects M&A, which is predominantly driven by, almost exclusively driven by the desire to grow, right? Companies recognize that they can't grow internally, and so they have to look outside to grow. And that growth philosophy, that growth strategy, usually is a leading factor before the rest of the public markets catch on. So it's a leading indicator when you start to see major M&A activity happen. It's a signal for obviously the general markets to follow, and then it self-perpetuates into companies wanting to act faster and get ahead of their competitors to get the best assets that are out there, and that's pretty much culminated in 2010, 2011, where those were the most probably active years from an M&A perspective as part of the last cycle. And it usually starts cascading from top down. So in 2005, that's when our biggest companies were taken out: Falconbridge, Inco, Noranda, Barrick, and that really facilitated the cascade down effect to smaller companies. That obviously continued on even through the global financial crisis onto 2010, 2011. So where are we today? I think we are starting to see the big M&A. We've started to see some significant unsolicited activity. Obviously, Glencore initiated a hostile takeover or an unsolicited takeover for Teck, which obviously turned into more of an asset sale. But that to me is signal that we are kind of on that precipice of the second half of the cycle. And I think we're going to see some bigger deals. Obviously, there are a number of rumored bigger deals out there in the copper space by not only copper companies, but by gold companies. I think that's one huge theme that we haven't seen. We didn't see the last cycle. The last cycle was predominantly driven by the Chinese. This cycle is driven, in my opinion, the incremental buyer or the marginal buyer will be the gold companies looking for copper assets and gold assets as well. So stay tuned. I think it's going to be a very active time.
And stay tuned for the webinar, because Sam's going to go over a complete overview of his company, which I think is up 100%. Year over year.
Well, since we've last spoken, we're probably one of the best, if not the best, performing companies in our sector.
So from a relative strength perspective, well done.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And that's saying a lot. A lot of companies right now are struggling. So I'm excited. March 20th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Join Sam. You can go in the description of this video for the registration link. And thanks for catching up today.
Awesome. Thanks, Carl. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.